Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to the organising committee for such a great meeting. I'm having a great time and learning all sorts of things. But the topic for this afternoon is the genomic value of dairy breed natural service size, a survey of breeding indices and relationship between scrotal circumference and daughter fertility. So my name's Rosemary Waite. I'm a dairy resident with the University of Melbourne, and this is the research project that I did for my residency. We'll just start with, and obviously I'm from Australia, and that's Australia. We've got 1.66 million cows, dairy cows in Australia, and the dairy areas are noted on the map there. Most importantly, I've been working in Tasmania, so the little island down the bottom, where we've got 9% of the national dairy herd. The large majority of the dairy herd is in Victoria, which is that little state above Tasmania. Less important, obviously, but still there nonetheless. So in Tasmania, we run very seasonal dairy system with seasonal calving, very, very, very pasture-based, and it is not uncommon for producers to employ artificial insemination as well as natural service, so using both components in their reproductive programs. So dairy natural service size, why should we care? So we know that it is anecdotally common for people to use natural service size. What we don't know very well is how many people are using dairy natural service size and how often. We can make some inferences from the Australian Dairy Herd Improvement Reports that are given. This is information from milk recording or herd recording for herds. Not every herd records, and the status of the parentage of each cow is reported. So from that, we can tell that 32% of those animals are naturally bred, 68% artificially bred. This is from the report from 2016. So whilst it's not perfect, it does suggest that natural service size are used, and I would concede that we don't know very much about them and we should know more. So let us find out some things. We know that selecting size in the dairy industry has a long and involved history, initially starting with typing attributes of daughters and then using those scores to select size. Those were eventually made into breeding values. More recent times we've been able to genomically derive those breeding values, and therefore gaining that information even before these animals have had any offspring. On the other hand, for natural service size, we have fewer options for selection. We can use the BBSE or the bull breeding soundness exam, and that's more physical attributes and not necessarily genetic potential. Theoretically, it's possible to type animals, but we don't track the offspring of these animals enough in order to type them. So we've got fewer selection strategies for our natural service size. Another aspect of this project was that we know that in beef breeds, there's done quite a significant body of work linking scrotal circumference to various attributes in their daughters. We've got positive links between increasing scrotal circumference and decreasing heifer age at puberty, increasing scrotal circumference and decreasing age at first service in daughters, and increasing scrotal circumference and increasing heifer pregnancy rates. Doing this study, we thought there might be a good opportunity to see whether this was the same in dairy size as well as in beef. And we were going to do that instead of using genetic correlation studies, using the fertility Australian breeding value. So in acquiring genomic information on these natural service size, we would also acquire the fertility Australian breeding value, which is derived from calving interval, lactation length, days to first service, non-return rates and pregnancy rates. And using that, we thought there might be a correlation between scrotal circumference and fertility. So whilst it's not the same as the other body of literature has performed this in the past, we surmised that maybe there was a connection there. So to sum up the objectives of the project, we've got number one, to survey the genetic worth of pasture-based natural service size in the study area of northwestern Tasmania. And number two, investigate a possible link between scrotal circumference and daughter fertility in dairy breed bulls. So to do that, we had two groups of bulls, a group of 85 Jersey bulls and a group of 124 Holstein bulls, and we took tail hair samples from those bulls and submitted them for the clarified genomics test. So that's the test that's run by Zoetis. And we also took scrotal circumference measurements at the age of 18 months. And with that data, we plan to do some analysis. Firstly, we wanted to compare, look at the Australian breeding values that were derived from those natural service sires and compare them to a couple of places. We've got the National Australian Sire Identification Scheme bulls that have data that was available, so we could compare to that group, and we can also compare to the Good Bulls Guide group, which is the cream of the crop, as it were, of Australian bulls. So an elite group and a less elite group that we were going to compare our boys to. We're also going to, of course, investigate that scrotal circumference and daughter fertility link. So here's a screenshot of the results. There's quite a lot, but we decided just to focus in on two elements of the breeding values that were supplied. So one of them is Balance Performance Index, which is BPI, and the other one was daughter fertility. So here's the results for Balance Performance Index distribution in both our breeds. So on the left there we've got the Holsteins, and the right we've got the Jerseys. Now for balance, I've got profit down the bottom, but I mean performance. Balance Performance Index, every point of Balance Performance Index is a potential $1 Australian profit. So those animals above 0 are better than average, and those animals below 0 are worse than average. And you can see there from those histograms of those bulls, we've got a fairly normal distribution. Some bulls better than others. And then for daughter fertility, this is slightly different in that 100 is considered average, and above 100 is better than average, and below 100 is worse than average. And every point of daughter fertility is equal to a 1% increase in 6-week and calf rate, which is our yardstick or measure of performance in our seasonally calving herds. So as you can see there, the Holsteins slightly more towards the other side there than the Jerseys, but let's compare them to their compatriots. So first up, a bit scary, a table, but we'll be okay. Oh no, this is the one without the numbers. Right, excuse me a minute. So we've got the study group down the bottom there. Oh, here we go. There we go. So these are the study group means. So for BPI, so Balance Performance Index, negative 9.63 plus or minus, this is mean the standard deviation, 47.83 for the Holsteins, and for the Jerseys 39.09 plus or minus 61. And these asterisks are delineating statistical differences between the study group and that group. So we have a statistical significance between study group bulls and good bulls for Holstein in our Holstein group, with good bulls, guide bulls, and the sire identification scheme bulls doing much better. But in the Jerseys, we have no statistical significance in the difference between the sire identification scheme bulls and the study group, but a difference with the good bulls, guide bulls. And over here, this is the daughter fertility, again, mean plus or minus standard deviation. Study group bulls here, mean of 107.1 plus or minus 3.92. And interestingly, no significant difference with the good bulls, guide bulls. So our natural service sires were on par with those good bulls, guide bulls for fertility. A significant difference though, and significantly better than the national service, significantly, yeah, not different for those two and less for the sire bulls, the sire accreditation scheme bulls. And again for the Jerseys, 101 plus or minus 2.46 mean for the study group bulls, and they were, the good bulls, guide bulls were better, whilst the, and again with the national service sire bulls. So I suppose from that analysis we can surmise that whilst our natural service sire bulls haven't been aren't quite the same. There are some definite advantages in these guys, and maybe we can think about using clarified and genomic breeding values to select our natural service size in the future if we're wishing to pursue genetic gain. And the other aspect of the study was looking at the relationship between daughter fertility and scrotal circumference. And I can tell you that this is not significant and this is not significant. So we've got scrotal circumference across the bottom here and the daughter fertility Australian breeding value up the side, Holsteins on the left and Jerseys on the right. And there was no significant relationship between daughter fertility and scrotal circumference in the study. So I'd just like to again draw your attention back to those previous studies that were conducted very differently with genetic correlations than this. So I suppose we shouldn't have expected a similar result, but you don't know if you don't look. So that's that. So to surmise, dairy bulls are used and contribute to the fertility of Australia's national herd. There is variation in the genetic value with better and worse ones, and there's no link between scrotal circumference and the genomically derived daughter fertility ABV. I'd like to thank a few people, Smith and Veterinary Service, Dairy Australia, the University of Melbourne, my supervisors Craig Dwyer, David Beggs, Peter Mansell and Michael Pyman, Zoetis and DataGene, as well as Mark Stevenson, Peter Williams and Michelle Axford from DataGene, the owners of the animals, and Norman Bishop. Thanks very much.